everyone. We are going to kick it off with some introductions, then cover some of the most common pain points we see related to deficiency management, sales and service workflows, and of course, the tactics and strategies that some of our most profitable customers have adopted as solutions. We'll then wrap it up with a recap of new and upcoming features, and then cover next steps and Q&A at the end as well. So I'll kick it off with my introduction here. I'm Katie Doyle, Product Marketing Manager at InspectPoint. I may have talked to you in a customer feedback interview meeting. I work closely with product and customer success to help get the word out about our new and upcoming features. We also have Austin Baldwin on with us, account manager at InspectPoint with expertise in using software to enable efficiency. And then our very own Drew Slocum, co-founder and chief strategy officer here at InspectPoint. You may also know Drew as host of the Fire Protection Podcast and NFPA committee member. So we are very excited to have Drew on with us today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Drew to get into the webinar here.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Yeah, it's a pleasure being on this webinar. I know I haven't done one in a while, so it's cool to be asked to do this. So again, I talk to a lot of talked to a lot of our users and just fire protection professionals over the years, and kind of optimizing our workflow, and it's always evolving month to month, right? And we see challenges from the field and the industry, and we try to kind of reiterate on that pretty quickly. So, what you're going to learn over the next hour or so is kind of just tips and tricks of what we've seen and within the industry, but also we've seen with our solutions. So we'll hit some of the top pain points again within the inspection service deficiency workflow, 5 key pain points, and then some solutions to those. So again, throw out the questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. So, pain point 1, obviously, and these aren't in any order, ranking wise, but just different. Everybody comes off of different software solutions, different areas of the country, different countries as well, like Canada versus Latin America and all that. So, how you currently obviously use InspectPoint, obviously the power of inspection, but kind of bringing that together with the work order and the proposal features. So, a lot of times, talking to people over the years and just, working with customer success and onboarding, processes are all over the place. Katie, go to the next slide quick. So, this isn't everybody's solution, right? You may have a contract flowing in that then kicks off kind of the inspection series and all that, but this could be potentially where you're at. You really need to identify coming onto InspectPoint kind of what you were doing and kind of what we potentially could offer. So documenting that is really key to improving the process. So again, this is just one instance of that. Every company's a little bit different. So Katie's going to go into some solutions of essentially how to optimize from what you're currently doing, and even with InspectPoint, what is the current flow, and some tips and tricks. So.
Yep. And before we get into the tactics too, I do want to remind people that through registering, by being here today, you're all eligible for an in-depth workflow evaluation with Austin. So he'll talk about at the end, we'll go through with you, map out what your workflow looks like, and identify areas for opportunities for improvement. So first one, integrating sales and service departments. What do we mean here? We see that some of our most efficient users have not only their inspection techs on the platform, but also sales and service teams. And this cuts multiple steps out of their workflow. So again, it might look a little bit different for everyone, but with using InspectPoint proposals and service, we have that inspection to collection workflow where we can convert the inspection to a proposal, bring on our deficiencies, include proposals, get that proposal out the door without even leaving the platform, convert to a work order, and then ultimately complete that work order, convert to an invoice, and collect payment. One of the benefits here is what some users call the deficiency conveyor belt, really that idea that linking your deficiencies from inspection to proposal to work order, make sure nothing falls through the cracks. It helps customers see what they need to repair. It gives techs crucial information when they're out doing that work order in the field, and of course saves everybody time. Now, we know, for sure that Inspect Point's proposal service invoicing allows you to avoid some of the complexities and efficiencies of over integrating, right? Of spreading yourself too thin on multiple different products. That said, we do know that inevitably there are going to be other softwares in your tech ecosystem, right? That are just a crucial part of your operations. And we get that. So we're seeing people have a lot of success with strategically and selectively integrating with other platforms beyond Inspect Point. Accounting integrations, right? Syncing invoices, syncing customer data, cutting down on that need for manual entry. CRM and ERP integrations here. Zoho is just one example. We have others coming out. Lots of different ways to automate customer communication, requests, internal sales processes, purchase orders. Again, we're having more and more come out here. So Austin is a great person to talk to about that. And of course, compliance integrations, another way to really save time on tedious administration tasks and give your team back more time in their day for revenue generating activities. Proposal template. So as Drew mentioned, we're talking about industry best practices, and we're also talking about those nitty-gritty tactics that help in the day-to-day, because of course we need to succeed in both areas to see growth, right? And one tool that might be a little bit buried in your settings area, but is so impactful on your business is proposal templates. So proposal templates can include predetermined materials, services, pricing, those fields like terms and conditions, summary, exclusions, etc. You can then convert that proposal to a work order, of course, but also to an inspection or inspection series. This is a new feature that is helping people get those bids out for new inspection contracts as well. And we were really excited to hear from Wendy, who is a fire protection service and inspections manager at H.J. Pertzborn in Madison, Wisconsin, about how helpful this feature has been for her. So in her old system, Wendy was digging through Excel, opening a spreadsheet, putting costs in there, kind of manually building out quotes that might be, familiar to some of us here. But she built out a template in Inspect Point for sprinkler inspections, for fire pump repairs, for 5-year inspections. She can now bid a 5-year and get that out really quickly. She has also set up customer specific templates, which we thought was a really good idea. So she has a correction facility with over 37 different buildings, right? Has a template just for that account. So when she needs to do a quote for them, she can get it out the door really quickly. And we know that obviously helps with acceptance timelines as well as the customer's likelihood to accept. Alrighty, so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Drew on our second pain point here, navigating codes and jurisdictional requirements.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. You know, another thing on templates, I know it has been super powerful even when I show the platform beyond even inspection and service, installation, right? You could do a quick fit out on it as well. So I think it is a super powerful. It is a little bit buried, like Katie mentioned. So really, really cool to show that in the demos sometimes. Anyway, you know, navigating the codes, again, I follow and sit on a variety of different NFPA committees. And the jurisdictional requirements are all over the place, right? Whether, if you're lucky enough to be in a city or state that you're on one essentially kind of set of NFPA or local codes, that's great. But a lot of times you're crossing over state lines, even crossing over city lines, right? I know in the tri-state area of New York, you could be on New York City has a different NFPA 25 code than the rest of New York State. That is a little bit different than Long Island. New Jersey's got its own requirements. So how do you do that at scale, right? Not only you have NFPA requirements, but you might have jurisdictional requirements, or compliance engine, if your jurisdiction is on compliance engine, how is that adapting to what the AHJ wants? Is that different than what the insurer of that building is doing? So how do you do that at scale? There's some recent features that we've rolled out in the last year or so that will really help you out with that, and Katie will get into that.
So jumping into some of the tactics here. So many of you probably know we do have built-in code references for NFPA 25. Some people choose to show these on inspection questions, others just on deficiencies on reports. We have flexibility there. So choosing what works for you and your customers, we can accommodate, different options. We do see across the board that businesses who include those deficiencies and references on proposals see significantly higher acceptance rates. So that's definitely something to consider. You can see in our example of our proposal builder here, you go into the proposal, you can see all of the relevant deficiencies, pull it onto the proposal either as a line item or just as a reference with that NFPA code reference appended right at the end. So that's a great tactic to start doing if you haven't already. Sector-specific workflows. Now, of course, we know in order to get those deficiencies documented right, we need to complete the inspection itself, and that is a huge part of the workflow. What's powerful about our platform is that our workflows are tailored to each trade, right? Extinguisher, sprinkler, alarm, and so on. We'll touch on this later when we talk about inspection materials and services, but with the extinguisher module, for example, right within the context of the inspection, techs can track services they've completed, the material they may have used, without ever having to leave the inspection. And of course, how well this work, right, depends on having that materials and services list set up and making sure techs know about best practices and know about your expectations for them. So both of those are things we'll cover later on as well. That does bring us to our next pain point here, which is around the breakdown of communication between office and field.
Yeah, and you know, every construction industry is kind of dealing with this, right? Is you have installers in the field, you have fitters in the field, you have inspectors in the field, and how it's always has been a struggle communicating back and forth, no matter what trade you're in, right? And obviously with digital tools now, it does put essentially the power in front of that field team. um you know Everything is cloud. Most, hopefully, everybody, all the solutions in your tech stack are cloud based, so essentially everywhere you're at, you have access to that, so including the salespeople. If you're doing a bid in the field, you have access, obviously, to inspect point. You could build that out. So with all that, obviously it flows all together, and the techs and fitters and everybody can communicate directly to the office. And you can even put a power in those field team members to build out those quotes, or even empower them to perform service in the field right after that inspection. Put it right into your contract for anything $300 and less. Let the technicians fix it on site, so you don't have to roll the truck again for that customer and come back out and fix it. So again, you gotta treat your, obviously, customers a little bit different on their needs, but again, we give you the power with that, and Katie will go over some of that here.
Yeah, one thing Drew and I were talking about too before is some customers adopting technician commissions, which can be helpful. Of course, everyone has different comfort levels, right, with what you want your techs to do in the field. For that reason, it has been a priority for us to make our mobile app proposal builder as flexible as possible. Some people just allow techs to select items to add to a proposal and have the office finish building out that proposal. For others, we do have a full proposal builder in the field where techs can obviously add materials and services, but they can also select from those widgets that you're adding to your templates, right? Your terms and conditions, your summary, your exclusions, and they can build out a whole proposal right from the iPad or iPhone. They can share and send that proposal right from the app as well, and even collect a deposit, card on file, or signature. So obviously different companies have, varying levels of comfort, as we said, but we do have the capability to hide prices as well, which can help, kind of get to a middle ground there in terms of what techs have access to do in the field. A new feature too that we did want to highlight is work order proposal. So of course, when you're completing an inspection, your tech can also create a proposal for any deficiency work they may identify. But we have that same feature on work orders now too. So people are seeing a lot of traction here, quoting additional service work during that work order, or even using work orders dispatching a visit for a job walk, where they can then go ahead and bid an inspection contract from the work order. So we're seeing, lots of good feedback there, and definitely something we want to highlight as a new feature in the product. Encouraging detailed deficiency information. So we've touched on this a little bit already, but I think it is worth emphasizing. We really see people have success when they encourage their techs to write up detailed deficiency notes. That allows the estimator to crank through proposals without having to go back, waste time either calling up the tech, trying to get details, or even going back to do a site visit. Deficiency photos too. We hear this time and time again. In many cases, the person signing your checks might not be at the building, right? They might never have stepped foot in that riser room. And sometimes, oftentimes, they may even be out of state. So seeing a picture of what's going on, we see really increases their likelihood to accept. Accurately tracking all billable work. So obviously we know our service work is a large driver of revenue, but we want to make sure you're capturing all billable work even during an inspection. So if you joined our webinar last month with Jen and Austin, you probably heard about our new inspection materials and services feature. And this allows your tech to track minor repairs during the inspection. So as Drew mentioned, if you have sort of a retainer where you have an agreement to complete a certain amount of billable work during that inspection, this is a great way to track and record that. Other people are using it to add truck charges, even no-show fees if that happens. This is especially helpful on our extinguisher inspections, again, right within the extinguisher module. The tech can select items, they can see favorited items to get, easily find what they typically add. And then on the back end, you can generate an inspection invoice with just one click, right? So all of those completed items go right onto your inspection invoice. And you'll also have a detailed record on the inspection of the items that the tech added. So this gives you visibility into what was actually done, what materials were actually used. And that leads us to our next pain point here, again related to visibility and insights, a pain point around lack of business insights and intelligence. So I'll turn it over to Drew to talk through that one for us.
Yeah, it's kind of a good segue into this kind of business intelligence and analytic reports. So, BI, there's a lot of BI tools out there, but and we have some internal to Inspect Point, but just being around obviously fire protection for a while, and learning obviously the inspection and kind of that reoccurring revenue model. What is your company doing obviously for inspection revenue, right? You have a quarterly inspections $200, right? Um, if you have three of those, there's $600. What's the annual look like? Price wise, maybe it's $2,000. So your inspection revenue pretty well. Can you tie that to service revenue for deficiencies off of that inspection, right? I think best in breed ratios are for every dollar of inspection, you're getting 4-5 times that on the service side. Now that's more of a sprinkler, maybe fire alarm number out there. Obviously, extinguisher, you're not going to get a 4-to-1. It's more probably 1-to-1, or if you can get 2-to-1. But without knowing that, you can't obviously analyze that. So there are some tools within Inspect Point for those BI tools. On top of that, there we do connect to Microsoft Power BI if you're a larger company and you have access to BI. So there are some integrations there where essentially you could pull any analytic from our platform into your own customized reports. So Katie's going to go over some of the what we see and what you can pull from our platform currently, and we're always obviously evolving this and would love feedback from our user base. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll cover some of the ways that people are really getting insights into day-to-day operations and then also, bigger picture KPIs, metrics, etc. So going first into the day-to-day, right, operations, we're seeing people have a lot of success using our scheduler map to increase efficiency in technician routes. So you can strategically schedule planned inspection work, emergency service visits. This is a very powerful tool. We're building on this as well, looking at sort of real-time GPS integration as well. More to come on that soon. But if you haven't started using the map yet, we highly recommend you start digging into it. We know it's robust too. So again, your CSM is always there to help walk you through the best way to use this. It does have a schedule and dispatch board as well. So if you're using our older, schedule and dispatch board, now might be a good time to start looking at the newer version with the map view. So analytic reports, we could probably have a whole webinar just dedicated to our analytic reports, but we did want to touch on a few key areas. First, this is our new home dashboard. Hopefully everyone has seen it at this point, but if you have not enabled the preview yet, we highly recommend you doing so. Really easy way to get kind of quick insights into KPIs for inspection, service, invoices, proposal, deficiencies, and payments if you are using Inspect Point payments. Another newer report is our revenue forecast. So again, this is available in your analytic reports area. This can be a helpful tool to kind of identify your busier times, your slower times, and figure out what decisions you may need to make around that, which we'll touch on next. Proposal and invoice insights, helpful metrics here, kind of standard KPIs and other ways to see how are your sales users performing, how are techs performing, and then for invoice insights, looking at which customers owe you the most money, being able to look at historical data. So there's a lot there, I think, that is worth digging into. And then this is a newer report as well, really helpful for companies doing extinguisher inspections. The extinguisher projection report really helps you plan upcoming extinguisher inspections, see what maintenance, etc., is required at which buildings. Lots of dynamic filtering options here to drill down based on what you need to see. Now, obviously, our data is great, but if it's not used to inform decision making, it can only go so far. So where we see people really have success is when they combine the insights they're able to get from the platform with other strategies and tactics. So great example of this is looking at those analytic reports and seeing, which techs might need support around efficiency or productivity, right? Time entry is a great way to look into that as well, which we'll talk about at the end here. And proposal reminders too. So Wendy, who we mentioned before, also shared with us how she combines looking at her analytic reports to determine where are they maybe heavier on work some months, where are they lighter, and when she sees that they're lighter, she turns proposal reminders on, increases the frequency and cadence, and finds that 70% of those bids are signed and returned on the second reminder. So that's really powerful. These can be, enabled for specific proposals as well. So maybe you want to bug some people and leave other customers alone. You have the flexibility to do that. You can control frequency too. So if you see that you're really busy and you can't take more work on, you can turn off reminders or bring down the frequency and cadence. So lots of possibilities there to kind of adjust and iterate based on what you're seeing from your analytic reports. Alrighty, so I think we're going to turn it back over to Drew here on our last pain point around cost and profit margin
Hey,
management.
hey, Katie, go back to just I want to reiterate a KPI point within the analytic report on slide
Yeah,
40. We have this proposal insights, right? I mentioned that 4-to-1 ratio. Another big key metric, and this is just not in fire protection, is the average time to acceptance, right? It's baked into this analytic report. So the quicker you get a proposal out to the client, the higher likelihood that they will accept that. And usually the turnaround time is like 24 hours. So obviously with our tool, you'll be able to turn that around, but you'll be able to track that more within this analytical tool. So analytic tool. So again, you obviously you can see what salespeople or different technicians are getting their quotes out faster. So um, that, and then the next one, that extinguisher, just a little kind of future ad. We are adding one for sprinkler head testing coming soon. It'll probably be sometime in Q2. So sprinkler head testing is a big deal. There's a lot of different frequency changes within NFPA 25, whether it's a quick response head, a dry head. So if you're not gathering information about sprinkler heads now, that's going to be key moving forward with this, because then you'll be able to essentially forecast out when you need to test sprinkler heads. And that's a very high dollar value if they have to be changed out. And it's obviously very lucrative to those fire protection companies. So
awesome. Great background. Thank you, Drew.
um, yeah, last pain point want to discuss, obviously, knowing your costs, knowing your margins, right, on your recurring revenue business, and obviously your install business too, but we're focused on recurring revenue here. So over the last few years, through the pandemic and then obviously inflation, we've seen costs go up. We had obviously we have labor shortages, and labor's gone up as well, but costs of materials have gone up. It's kind of stabled out, or it's been stable at this point over the last six to 12 months, with supply chain and all that. But how are you measuring that, right? Do you know your costs? Um, Obviously, you can get your costs for your labor pretty easily, but do you know your costs for your material, right? Are you baking that into your proposal process? Are you baking that into obviously your what you're actually paying for that? So uh, the slide that Katie's showing right here, this is from a random I think it's called House or whatever. This
Fixer.com,
is
I
the
think it was,
what,
right?
what's it called?
Fixer.com, I think.
Fixer.com.
Yeah.
This is not even close to what the market's
Yeah.
paying, but what are you charging for an extinguisher service for an annual? What are you doing for a quarterly sprinkler inspection versus an annual sprinkler inspection, right? And then obviously you have cost of material going into that. So knowing your margins are really important. Obviously, with inflation going the way that it's going, and then obviously your labor. So we have some really cool tools to be able to do that, and obviously optimize your margins.
Yeah, lots of new stuff here that we want to take a moment to talk through. So, when customers have cost and price stored in their materials and services list, and we know that's a challenge, we'll talk more about that in the next slide. But with that set up, it does enable you to use our new profit margin calculator on proposal. So when you build out your proposal, you'll see a new checkbox on the first screen, enable profit margin, and that turns on this margin calculation. So you can see the green box highlighting that on your individual line items, but also on your proposal overall. So you are able to see the margin in dollar amount, but also percentage, and it is a great way to understand how much you're actually making on each job based on what you're charging for materials or for service. Of course, though, that depends on having a materials list that is maintained and updated. I have talked to a lot of customers about this. I know that is easier said than done, but we are really prioritizing ways to make this easier for you, whether you're a small business or a larger business. So for some people, manually updating that materials and services list works. And if that's, the case for you, we're not going to come in and say absolutely do it a different way, but we do have options to consider as well. So I do just want to call out corrections. Hopefully we all know this right now. Corrections are now renamed materials and services. So your proposed corrections are now materials and services. Those corrections and materials are now managed in one place called materials and services in your settings area. And we've also upgraded the design of that screen. So now rather than clicking into an item to make changes, you can just click on the price field right on that main page and update the price if that's how you're choosing to manage your materials list. For folks on QuickBooks, if they update the price of that product and service in QuickBooks Online or desktop, that is going to automatically update an inspect point. So that price change will sync to the office, will sync to the field. That is a great way to keep things accurate. And then we know, there's a lot of us still out there still using Excel to manage materials lists. That's pretty common. We are working on automation where if you update the item in Excel, it will automatically sync to Inspect Point. So that is a newer offering we are working on building out, and Austin will be your go-to person to, explore if that's a possibility for you. Lastly, time entry. With our time entry feature, which is included in all tiers, right? This is not an add-on, like it's built right in, available to you. You do not need to enable it. It's right there. So on inspections and work orders, techs can clock in and clock out. They can select the activity, which obviously gives you visibility into where they're spending time. They can select a rate. And there's lots of settings here too. So if you want to use time entry just to get a sense of like where are techs actually spending their time, you can exclude time entry from service reports and invoices. Or if you want to use it to bill for labor, you can choose to automatically push it to your service report and invoices. So lots of options there. Obviously using the iPad or iPhone app, they can clock in, clock out, track time on a work order or an inspection. In the technician portal, however, they can track time on any number of activities. So we see people having success setting up tracking on breaks, drive time, training, workshop time, to really get that full picture of how techs are spending, time out in the field, and also how much do people need to charge for their service work to make sure they're accurately passing on those costs.
Hey, Katie, I wanted to hit on one point on the
Yeah.
material costing side.
Yeah.
We're starting to work with a variety of suppliers, right, or manufacturers where, on trying to integrate some of their price lists, right, into our platform. We have a few currently in the pipeline, but if you do have any vendors that you work with that are potentially interested in an integration with us, be happy to talk to them. Yeah, obviously go through your CSM or Austin or somebody like that. But automating that because price increases happen, potentially 3 or 4 times a year. So
Mhm.
how do you do that at scale? It's a problem within all construction, but again, we're trying to solve that as well.
Awesome. Great call out, Drew. So we've touched on a couple of these newer features. We do just want to kind of recap to make sure everyone is aware of them. And again, your CSM is a great person to go to get more information. If you have questions, inspection materials and services, that's the ability to track completed and services materials used on an inspection that is now live. We did do a webinar about this last month. That replay is available and is also going out in a customer newsletter next week. So keep an eye out for that. If you want to rewatch, share with your team, etc. Work order proposals. This is now enabled for folks on our work order module. So you can create that proposal from the work order, either from the field or from the office. Profit margin calculator, we touched on that. Another nice new feature on the proposal builder side is that ability to automatically roll up individual line items into a single line item. A lot of people we heard were doing this manually. If they don't want to expose every single, individual line to their customer, we now have a way to group those automatically. So that's really helping people on the proposal build out side. QuickBooks Online, we do have improvements around two-way syncing for accounts and building, some other configuration options. Austin is our go-to QuickBooks guy, so reach out to him if you're interested in exploring that integration. And then a couple of things coming soon. So customer-specific pricing enhancements, ability to create pricing groups for pricing adjustments, markups, for example, assigned to specific customers. So that is something that will be available in the coming months. We are also exploring a web-based work order module. So the ability for techs to complete work orders via the technician portal on any device connected to the internet. So this means your service techs would not need to be on an iOS device. So that's something we are currently doing discovery around now as well. Alrighty, I'm going to turn it over to Austin now to talk through some of our next steps and then kick off our Q&A.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Good job, Katie and Drew, putting this together. Tons of great information there. Yeah, would love for you guys to use the Calendly link that I dropped in the Q&A section or the chat section to schedule a time with me to kind of do a more in-depth workflow evaluation of how you guys are, currently using InspectPoint or currently doing your processes around inspections, proposals, workflows, collections of payments, any of that sort of stuff. We can create a whole flow chart, make it look fancy for you guys, so you guys have some sort of visual representation of what that looks like, and then identify areas of improvement where we can, help automate things, become more efficient, best practices that we've heard from other customers as well. Would love to have the opportunity to do that with you all. Again, completely free, no obligation. So feel free to find a time with that link that works for you guys, and we can get that scheduled.